your money problems have nothing to do with money? Like, what if the budgets keep failing, the saving plans keep falling apart? Not because you are doing it wrong, but because there is a story running in the background that says you don't actually deserve to have more. I know that sounds dramatic, but honestly, that was me. And it took me a really long time to see it because I wasn't looking at my beliefs. I was looking at my bank account. Here's where it started for me. I had this thing I used to say, and I said it so casually, like it was just a fact, right? And it was, I'm just not good with money. Like, said it with friends talking about investing, said it at brunch casually, said it when I looked at my bank account and felt the familiar pit in my stomach. I'm just not good with money. And I never questioned. I said it the same way I would say I'm not a morning person or I'm terrible with giving directions. Just built in, just who I am. But here's what I didn't understand then. When you attach something to your identity like that, when you say, I'm not a money person, your brain takes that as a job description. It finds evidence to prove that you're right every single time. You overspend once. See? Not good with money. You avoid your account for a week. See? Not good with money. You get a little ahead and then something blows it. See? Not good with money. And this label stays locked in. This isn't a habit problem, right? No budget, it's gonna fix this. Because you can't out-system a belief that lives in your identity. So where did that belief come from? Because I used to think it was just me, like just who I am, right? Like some people are wired for money and I just wasn't one of them. But that's not how this works. We are not born with money beliefs. We absorb them. So when I think about money growing up wasn't constantly talked about directly, the beliefs around money definitely were. I heard things like money doesn't grow on trees and rich people are greedy and it's better to be poor and honest than rich and dishonest. And when you hear those things over and over as a child, you start unconsciously linking money with guilt, selfishness, dishonest, almost like struggle equals goodness. So even though nobody sat me down and explicitly said being wealthy is bad, I think the message I absorbed was good people struggle, good people sacrifice, good people don't care too much about money. Like, be humble, right? And honestly, I think a lot of us grew up carrying invisible beliefs like that without even realizing. And the wild thing about absorbing beliefs as a kid is that you don't get to choose what you take in. You are just watching, you're just listening, feeling the energy in the room when money come up. And then you grow up and you carry all of it without even knowing you were carrying all of it. For a long time, I thought my spending patterns were about discipline, about willpower, about just needing a better system. But it was never about the system. It was about what I believed underneath the system. But here's where it gets interesting. Because once I started looking at the belief, I started seeing it everywhere in my behavior. And it was not pretty. You know how I talked in week 1 about the online shopping spiral? If you haven't, I'm gonna link the video. So, and how this shopping spiral would start with things I genuinely needed and then somehow end up with a cart full of things I suddenly needed. There was not a self-control problem. There was a scarcity mindset running the show. My brain believed there was never gonna be enough. So when I had money, I needed to do something with it fast, like before it disappeared, before something went wrong, before I blew it somehow. So I spent it first, and then the money was gone. And I would feel awful and go into the same shame spiral again. And I would tell myself, I'm terrible with money. And you know what the shame spiral did? It didn't make me better with money. It made me avoid it, because nothing is less motivating than opening your bank account when you already feel terrible about yourself. Hear me out. A few years ago, I was doing this mindset course, and one of the concepts they taught was pay yourself first. You might or might not have heard about that. So it's basically saving 10% of your income before anything else. Almost as a signal to yourself, your future, the universe, whatever you believe, that you were committed to abundance instead of just survival. And honestly, it worked really well for a while. For probably about 6 months, I became super consistent. I actually built savings for the first time in a way that felt solid. I had enough saved for like 2 months of rent plus some bills, which for me at that time felt huge. But then somehow it all disappeared. And not because of one giant emergency, not because suddenly I paid off all my debt, not because of some massive life event. No, nothing like that. It just slowly licked away. Little purchases here, random spending there, convenience, trips here and there, unnecessary buys that felt justified in the moment, until one day I looked at my account and realized all that progress was basically gone. And thinking back, I think that was one of the first times I realized my issue wasn't just making money or even saving money. It was learning how to hold on to stability without unconsciously sabotaging it. Because I think so many of us are walking around thinking we have a money problem, when what we actually have is a belief problem that's been creating a money problem for years. Okay, so here's the part that actually helped. This is not I read one book, watched one video about abundance, and now everything changed. What actually changed things for me was noticing it before acting. Same thing I started doing with habits. I applied it to the money story running in real time. So here's 3 shifts that actually made a difference for me. The first one is I changed the language. I stopped saying things like I can't afford that. Not because I could suddenly afford everything, but because when you say I can't afford it, it keeps you locked in that identity. So instead, I start asking, is this something I'm choosing right now? See, that's a different question. One puts you on a victim mode. The other one puts you in control, and the feeling is completely different. The second one was how I looked at my money. Because my issue actually wasn't fully avoiding my bank account. If anything, sometimes I was obsessively checking it. But there's a difference between looking for information and looking at it from anxiety. I would check my bank account almost like I was bracing for bad news. Like, oh, maybe this time the number would magically stress me out less. And even though I was technically looking, I still wasn't being intentional with it. I was emotionally reacting to it. So I started trying to look at my finances more neutrally. Not to shame myself, not to spiral, not to panic. Just to know. Because you can't make intentional decisions about something that immediately triggers fear or stress in your body. And honestly, The more regularly and calmly I started checking things, the less power money had over me emotionally. It stopped feeling like this giant monster hiding in the corner of my life. The third one is I started separating the emotion from the spending. So right before I was about to spend impulsively, I started asking, what am I actually feeling right now? Not what do I want, but what do I feel? And most of the time, I was stressed or bored or that low-level background anxiety that doesn't even have a name, right? The spending was never about the thing. It was about managing the feeling. And once I could see that, I had a choice, which I didn't have before. So one small moment that felt like bigger than it should have happened recently at the grocery store. I don't know if you guys know this, I told before that grocery shopping was one of my biggest problem areas. Not in a dramatic way, but in that slow leak every week kind of way. And lately I've been doing this low buy challenge with myself. So now, before I go grocery shopping, I inventory my fridge the night before. I actually make a meal plan based on what I already have. Sometimes I even use AI to help me figure it out, meals like with random ingredients I already own instead of like automatically buying more stuff. So I remember standing in the grocery store looking at something that I wanted to buy but wasn't on my list. And for the first time, I actually paused and I asked myself, do I really need this, or am I buying it because it's on sale, or because I have this weird fear that I might need it later? And I know that moment sounds so small, but honestly, that's when I realized the shift was starting. Because before, I would have just thrown it in the cart automatically without even thinking. But now, there was awareness first. And I think that's where real change actually begins. In those tiny moments where the old pattern shows up. And you finally notice, you catch it before acting on it. So what actually happened? It didn't all change overnight. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I rewired my brain in a week. Because I didn't, and to be honest, I think I still have a long way to go. What changed is my relationship with the discomfort. I stopped running from it. I stopped using money to manage my emotions. I started getting curious about my patterns instead of cruel about them. And here's what I noticed, practically in real life. I check my bank account now and I don't spiral. That alone felt like a miracle at first. I catch the impulse to spend before I do it. Not every time, but way more than before. And the biggest one of all, the one that I want you to take out of this, I stopped telling myself I am not good with money. And that's what rewiring your brain actually looks like. It's not a light switch. It's catching the old story 100 times until the new one takes up more space. And if you're watching this going, okay, Paula, the mindset stuff makes sense, but what do I actually do differently? And that's exactly what next week is about. Because once this belief started shifting, I made some really specific changes to my actual money behaviors. The actions that finally stuck after years of trying. I'm walking you through all of them next Thursday. So if you're with me in this journey, subscribe. There's a new video every Thursday, and drop it in the comments. What's one money story you've been carrying around about yourself? Even something you've never said it out loud before. And as always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week.